giving you an overview of what it means to be trauma informed, how you can recognize that a little bit. I'm going to be talking about the 3 E's of trauma, and the 4 R's, as well as some principles of what a trauma-informed coach is, what being trauma-informed service provider means. And I've got someone joining me now. Hello. Hi, Jenna. Welcome. Glad you're here.
Thank you.
I'm so glad to have you. I'm really glad you joined.
Thank you. Me too. I had a free spot in my schedule, so I snuck in. So
Beautiful. I'm so glad to hear that. What questions do you have about trauma or being trauma informed? Do you have any to kick us off?
well, it's a good question. Yeah, I haven't been, I know that being trauma informed is very important. I haven't actually sat in on any sort of classes for that yet. So it's still fairly new to me, but I have dealt with my own personal traumas as well. So and gone through counseling and things like that to deal through that. So I have some perspective on that, but I'm still fairly novice to helping others with it.
Great. Thank you so much for being honest about that. I really appreciate that a
Yeah,
lot.
of
Yeah.
course.
And your own personal experience is, already, probably gives you a better leg up than a lot of other people when it comes to being trauma informed. And honestly, like, this wasn't something that a lot of, providers knew was essential until more recently. So I think it's pretty common that a lot of people aren't really even sure what it means. So hopefully today will be helpful and useful. Great, Vincent's here. I'll allow him in too. Can you tell me just a little bit about what you do so I can cater this to help you more specifically?
So are you gearing that towards me?
Yeah, do you mind?
Sure, of course. So I'm a registered dietitian, and yeah, and I specialize in something that's called intuitive eating.
Mhm.
So that's are you familiar with that?
Did we talk in our league? Were you telling me about anorexia? Oh, perfect. Yes. Awesome. Yes, I'm very familiar with intuitive eating. I think, yes, awesome. What being trauma informed with eating and with eating disorders and everything is so essential. It's so important. I'm so glad you're here.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And one of the things is that just even with my regular nutrition background, they don't necessarily go into trauma. They don't even really go into eating disorders. They give you a little bit of like kind of an overview of what some eating disorders are, but they don't necessarily go into like how to treat them. That takes actually more education and more internship and supervision and things like that. That is not really actually pushed to the students through our dietetics program. So now that I've been involved into this community a lot more, I've definitely been interested in the psychological side of eating, and it's really fascinating to me. So I'm so excited to expand my knowledge.
Great. I'm so glad you're here. And Vincent was on for just a second. I know Vincent, we've chatted before, dude. I'm so glad that you're here. I know you're probably listening. Oh, Jill's here. Feel free at any time to ask any questions that you have in the chat. Maybe he hopped off. No, he's somewhere. Okay. Hi, Jill. Jill's hopping on too. So Jenna, as I'm, talking and sharing a little bit today, feel free to, pop any questions in the chat. And then at the end as well, I'll open it back up for more questions. So hi, Jill. Welcome. So glad to see you. I feel so lucky. I've gotten to see Jill 2 days in a row.
I know. I love speaking with you, Missy.
Oh, thank you. I love speaking with you as well. Great. It's so good to be inviting and accepting some new folks in. And Great. And now Sunshine Warriors on. Hello, welcome, welcome, welcome. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and share a little bit more about what it means to be trauma informed. At the end, I will open it up for more questions. You're also welcome to put any questions in the chat. If there's anything, any topic that you really would like for me to cover today, I'm happy to do so. And then at the end, I'll talk a little bit more about what it might be look like to work with me if that's something that you're interested in. And my DMs are always open. If you have any more questions or you want to ask me something more that is more specific to what you do, feel free to send me a message. I'm happy to hear from you. Actually, really like, communicating with you all and being connected with you. So anytime I'm open to that. All right. So, what does trauma informed mean, right? Well, I was going to say, I'll just go ahead and do a little bit of an overview here. Basically, it means that it's a program, an organization, or a system, a provider. They recognize the widespread impact of trauma. So they're able to detect or see glimpse signs that show, hey, this person might be in a trauma response. So they understand what those different trauma responses are. They have a generalized understanding and overview of what it looks like to be traumatized. They also know like the symptoms of PTSD. So they're familiar with what that can look like. There's also different types of PTSD. There's acute PTSD, there's complex PTSD. There's also like a cultural trauma that, say, like the pandemic or political issues, things like that. Those can affect our society as a whole. There's racial trauma. I mean, really, I could go on and on and on. LGBTQ trauma. There's many different forms. Some of us have experienced more than one type, and some of us continue to experience trauma. Say, if you, in your childhood, you had chronically abusive parents or parents who were abusing drugs, that could certainly be complex trauma. Also, if someone uses drugs or is addicted, that is traumatic in itself. So there's many different forms. So a trauma-informed person is familiar with the different types of trauma, understands the impact of it, because trauma affects clients, our worldview. It affects the way that we see ourselves, our family, other people, and people can become isolated and scared and really have trouble trusting other people. They also may be quicker to anger and rage. So being a trauma informed is understanding generally, what trauma is, how it affects people, and how it affects the system, and also how it affects individuals. And they can also detect different symptoms or triggers of trauma as well. People might also have a lot of flashbacks, and they could be having chronic nightmares. So imagine you've got a client who you start working with them, and all of a sudden they're like, oh my God, I'm having nightmares every night. I felt like I was reliving what happened to me. I'm so anxious all the time. Sometimes you might see people even over explaining, like they'll be talking a lot, almost to where they can't take a breath, or they will give a lot of information up front. And it's actually a way to protect themselves, because they feel if they just go ahead and put it out there, you'll be like, oh, I don't want to touch that. So being trauma informed helps you to feel more comfortable and safe, because you know what to do. You know how to handle this in a gentle, kind, ethical, and integral way, and you can help your client. Also, your client is more likely to get great results from working with you, because they're going to feel calm and safe enough to work with you, because they're not so triggered and in a reactive state the entire time. Because what happens is trauma affects our brain. They've actually taken brain scans and images of different people's brains. One person has a lot of trauma, one person doesn't. Different areas are lit up, different areas are darkened. So it's not this person's fault. However, we can help them to gain responsibility to recover so that they can get the results that they want. Many times people who show up for, say, nutrition help, they're having a lot of stomach issues. There's a lot of somatic symptoms that happen with trauma. Jenna was telling me a little bit about what she does, with nutrition. And my brother's a gastroenterologist, and he tells me how many times, people come to him with psychosomatic symptoms, a lot of gut problems, IBS. A lot of my clients have IBS, chronic inflammation of the gut, it's very uncomfortable. It can affect your daily life. I actually had a client once who came to me after she had been to every doctor and every diagnosis was eliminated. They couldn't figure out what she had. She had been diagnosed with fibromyalgia. She thought she was having heart problems. It turned out she was having panic attacks because of significant trauma that happened to her. So once we were able to work on that trauma, guess what? She felt better. She didn't have to go to the doctor all the time. It saved her money, and she felt her life improved tremendously. So being trauma informed, I think, is something that I would love to see, not only us individuals, but systems, communities, families, even understanding, because our communication can improve once we are better informed about what is traumatizing for people and what happens to someone when they've experienced trauma. So back to the brain for just a moment. So I was telling you about how there's different pictures of what the brain looks like, trauma versus non-trauma brain. Well, there's a part of our brain that is in the middle, in the bottom. It's right above the brain stem, and that's where the amygdala is. And this part of the brain is what we call the ancient brain, or the lizard or reptilian brain. You might have heard a little bit about this. It was very popular for a little while to talk about this, or we call it the downstairs brain. That part of the brain is stronger, better developed, older than the other parts of the brain. And that part of the brain is where memory lives, where survival lives. So what happened, and our emotional centers too. And those signals from there are stronger than the cognitive part of our brain, which is up front and what they call the prefrontal cortex. So when someone's been traumatized, the part of the inside reptilian part of the brain where emotions are is much more active than the front part. So what that means is someone who's had trauma, the memories are in there with all the emotions. So the memories and the emotions are intensified. But also think about it. If your bells and whistles are going off saying, you're just sitting there, but your bells and whistles are going off saying, you're being traumatized, something terrible is happening, a snake is attacking you. Do you think that solving math problems or showing up for an event and asking questions is going to be available to you? It's going to be very difficult. Now, if you are able to show up, it's going to be very difficult to pay attention. So a lot of times we have people with memory issues, short-term memory, they're going to have trouble paying attention. So we see this a lot with kids in school. That's why they're not able to pay attention. That's why they're acting out. That's why they're angry, probably because they're traumatized. So can you see how informing your clients and helping them through their own trauma while also working on some of your own triggers as well can help you, can help your clients, and even there could be a ripple effect down to their children, their clients, their family members. So this is really important information to have in your back pocket, regardless of what kind of work you do, even if it's just to learn some tips, tools, techniques that help to calm your own nervous system down. So when you're feeling a little overwhelmed or you're going through a strenuous situation in your life, okay, I can do some somatic breathing on this. I know some bilateral stimulation techniques now that can really help me. And these are easy, simple to implement tools and techniques that can help you and your clients. Even just 2 minutes a day has, scientific been proven to be useful. And what's great is having a menu for our clients to choose from, I think is extremely important because not every client is the same. Some clients are going to absolutely love yoga. They're going to be like, yoga is my jam. I can't wait to do more yoga. Other people will be like, hell no, I'm not going to do any yoga. I can't wait. I want to go out in nature, or maybe I'll start off with something else. So having a menu of options and not making it about you when they don't want to choose whatever option you really like is really helpful too, because you might be like, well, I did EFT or tapping and found that to be incredibly useful, but your client may not like it. So, sometimes what happens with some coaches or leaders is they take it personally when the client's not getting the results that they see, they could potentially get, or you might not know what to do. So then that might make you a little bit afraid. So then your client isn't able to get the best result. So it helps you and your clients. Any questions so far about, oh, you're amazing too. I'm so glad you're here. Any questions so far? Welcome, Kristen. I'm so glad you're here. Happy to just pop them in the chat. And I will come back to them at any time. So I think we've gone over a little bit of the neuroscience of trauma, and I've talked to you a little bit about what it means to be trauma informed. For me, so a lot of there's a couple of other trauma, I mean, there's more than one. There's several trauma informed folks, coaches out there. But what I think is they're just talking about the awareness. So just being aware that trauma is the thing isn't enough, in my opinion. First of all, if you just become more aware of trauma, you might feel like you're walking around on eggshells because you're like, oh no, I don't want to, re-traumatize or anything like that. And then you can be nervous too, because like I said, trauma affects our worldview. Because if you start to find out, oh, there's all of these things can be traumatizing for someone, you can get overwhelmed and worry about it your own. There's something called vicarious trauma as well. You hear about these events and then you vicariously have some of the same emotions and reactions as someone who had actually undergone that trauma, even though you hadn't. Just listening and hearing it can be difficult. So if you're seeing trauma come up at all, understanding how to soothe your own nervous system can also be helpful. Because if you address it head on quickly, especially with that acute trauma, it can go away fast and doesn't have to be something chronic that someone carries with them for the rest of their life. Oh, no problem, Kristen. I don't think there's anything as being late. You're right on time. This is right exactly when you were supposed to show up. So I'm so glad to see your face. I'm really glad all of you were here. It really warms my heart to see you. Okay. So I think we need to be more than just aware. I think we need to know what to do. And and it's your choice how deep you go with that. If you just want to learn a few tools, that you can implement quickly, that you can give to your clients, awesome. If you want to go deeper into that work and learn how to really deeply heal trauma, then that is something that you could include with your offerings, which could be really great for you as well, depending on what kind of work you do and your interest level and that kind of thing. So, here are 4 R's of a trauma-informed approach. Realize that trauma is a thing. Treat every client as if they have trauma, because they probably do. And trauma is very relative. So, say you and your partner, friend, get into a car wreck. You're like a little shaken up, but you call the police department and you take care of everything. You're okay. You look over at your friend, they're white as a ghost. They are shaking. Maybe they even feel nauseous. Maybe they start vomiting. And you can't understand, like their reaction seems really intense for that situation. Then they might not ever want to get into a car again. They might be terrified to drive themselves. They might never want to get in a car with you again. While you're like, I'm good. Day or two go by, maybe you're a little sore. It's not that big of a deal. So the same situation, people will respond to differently. So being aware and treating everyone as if they've had some kind of trauma in their life it allows you to have a little bit more empathy for anyone in any situation, and it won't hurt to treat someone like they have trauma if they don't have trauma, basically. Okay, so we realize that trauma is a thing. We understand the different types of trauma and how it could show up. We learn to listen a little bit more deeply as well, because say someone says, oh, well, I grew up in Catholic school and, there was this priest who kind of creeped me out. If you weren't trauma informed, you might not think that much about something like that. Or there was a teacher who was just really kind of rude. Okay, well, everybody has a rude teacher every once in a while. But maybe if you ask 1 or 2 more questions when someone brings up something like that, you would really get to something that was deeper and underlying that's preventing them from getting the results that you help them get, that is contributing to behaviors that, are interfering with the life that they want. I do see it a lot with eating, a lot of binge eating disorder. I've worked with people who've gotten gastric bypass or were preparing to get gastric bypass, and I've worked with a lot of people with addiction. As far as with eating, either under eating, overeating, vomiting, this is a way to protect ourselves, to not be in the moment, to be more concentrating on the control of the food. And with binge eating disorder, especially with people who are morbidly obese, you're protecting yourself. If I'm large and this big, no one can hurt me. No one will want to touch me. I'm safer in this bigger, larger body. I've seen that too with hoarding. People creating piles of stuff around themselves to protect themselves, almost like a fortress. So when we see someone like that, even on TV, your brain can start to change and your empathy towards them can change. She said, well, maybe they had something really terrible happen to them when they were a child. Also, you can see a lot of emotional immaturity because people are stuck back at being 11 years old. So say you have a client and you're like, oh my gosh, this person is just not getting this. They seem so emotionally immature. They're acting out maybe with other group members or whatever it may be. Maybe they're 11 or 15. Maybe something happened to them when they were younger. So taking all of that into consideration can be really useful in your group programs and in your one-on-one. Jill actually brought up a great point last night when we were discussing this a little bit about understanding group dynamics. Group dynamics are very different than one-on-one because all of those different personalities, situations are coming into that room at a time. So if one person can trigger another person, a trigger may come up in front of everyone. How do you handle that professionally as the coach and leader? It's very important to understand those things. Okay, so we realize that trauma is a thing. We recognize the signs. So like I gave the example of the person in the car wreck, those are some signs. People may have physical reactions that you could see. Their face might get red. Their voice may change. They may start looking around the room. Seems like their energy is just gone somewhere else. There's different signs that you can pick up on. So you can, if you do that in the beginning, it doesn't have to get worse. You can automatically or very quickly intervene and help that client to relax so that you can continue with the session and with the teaching. And then, so you respond, right? So we respond. You respond in a trauma-informed, kind way. Maybe you offer them, maybe you breathe with them. You offer a technique or two to help them relax. And then you resist re-traumatizing it. So the great thing is you don't have to know all the details of the trauma. Sometimes as coaches, we get curious, right? We're like, what, tell me the things that happen. I want to understand. And you think that, by understanding, you can help them better, or that by them talking about it, it can be helpful. This is where talking isn't always helpful. For some people, it's very useful. They just want to be heard and seen. For many folks, trauma happens when someone hasn't been there to comfort them after that acute traumatizing event has happened. So they haven't had that time to process. But for other people, talking about it is just going to trigger them again. It's going to re-traumatize them, and it's going to make things worse. So instead of talking about it, we move into the body. So remember, I talked about how the front part of our brain isn't as activated as the emotional part or their survival part. If we can relax their nervous system, we can show them how to do that so that they can tell their body to relax. They can send signals back. Hey, there's not a snake, right? Because that's a physical reaction. That's not a logical reaction. Their brains are not on board. So if we can help them to relax that nervous system. So there's two parts of our nervous system. There's the parasympathetic and the sympathetic. The sympathetic is the one that says, run, fight, flee. The parasympathetic is the one that says, relax, digest your food, sleep, you can be calm. So there are ways that we can tap into that parasympathetic, the calm, relaxing part of our nervous system, and reset the whole nervous system in just 2 minutes flat. Pretty cool. So that is good to know, that you don't have to dig in and dive in and know every detail of the trauma. It actually might be better not to. And that really helps your clients too, because they may have been avoiding. So avoidance is a major sign of trauma. People usually avoid it. Then they get anxious and then they avoid it some more. So it's this terrible cycle where it's always there, but they keep avoiding it, but it keeps popping up, which is really annoying. And what we get to do is we get to empower our clients to face that fire and to walk through it with a shield and some armor, maybe some fireman equipment, so that they can finally walk through and be on the other side and not have to continue to have those reactions and responses and memories interfere with their daily lives. Any questions or comments so far? feel free to come off mute if you do.
Quick question. When you're talking about activating the parasympathetic nervous system and where that can, what's the word I'm looking for? That can turn off that trauma response so you can get into the relaxed state. Is that a tool do you teach that to your client before you get into it, or do you wait? Like, when do you bring that in as teaching that to your client? Is it a tool that they can use themselves?
Yes. So I have a few different tools that I use to help my clients with that. Again, like I give them a menu of options, but I teach them that pretty much right away. I teach my clients about trauma in the brain and what they can do to relax and reset right away.
You give, okay, that reset tool. I like that term. Reset
Yeah.
tool upfront. Okay.
Yeah, I do. I feel like it's extremely important, and you can do it in just 2 minutes. So I have like a variety of tools that I offer people, whether they're alone, whether they're in public, so that they can ease, if they're feeling overwhelmed or anxious, they can easily implement it. And in 2 minutes flat, they can be back where they want to be. Also, if they practice these same techniques like once or twice a day, even regardless of having anxiety, their overall anxiety will go down. So they should be having less like very anxious or panic-y feelings throughout their days as well. Great question.
I have a question. So for some of the tools that you provide for these types of moments, one of the things I've been looking into lately is polyvagal theory. Is that part of something of what you work on as well?
It is.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, the polyvagal theory, is based on the vagus nerve, which is it's like a big stem, that goes all the way through our body and connects. Yes, and it connects like branches all throughout. So I do incorporate that with that nervous system regulation. Yes.
Yeah, I found that that's a very supportive technique for myself personally. So yeah, there was this time when I was having this massive panic attack, and nothing was helping with bringing it down, including taking a benzo, which would sometimes, definitely knock at least a good portion of it out, and it didn't do anything. And so a friend of mine talked to me about these polyvagal exercises, and it was amazing. It actually helped resolve that panic for that time. So I was very impressed by it. So anyways, sorry, just wanted to add that in there.
No need to apologize. I'm so glad you asked that. Another great question. I love nervous system and neuroscience stuff. I think it's fascinating, and I think it's really, really helpful. As someone who started off really studying addiction, which I love doing, and I've helped a lot of people recover, but I realized that studies say, 2/3 of women who've experienced addiction have experienced a traumatic event. So I think it's probably, it's and 1 in 4 women. So trauma is very widespread. It's very high. And I realized that, well, not only, they had most of these people had chronic complex trauma. And it was the root of so many different disorders that I was seeing. And this is why I have moved away more from like mental health therapy, because I think it's kind of BS. I think it's kind of BS because like literally anybody could have any one of those disorders. Myself, I've been diagnosed with like 10 different things, and at the end of the day, can we just get to these are all symptoms: anorexia, eating disorders, addiction, so many, so many different skin picking. I could go on and on and on, depression, anxiety, all of those things. They're all stemming from a core problem. So if we can get that person to relax and we can help them heal that thing. Because the deal is, a lot of people will say, well, the difference between therapists and coaches. I'm going to tell you, as a seasoned therapist, I have met some coaches and healers who do better work than a lot of therapists. And I think that because we have such a traumatized society in the United States, everybody is damn dying from overdoses. We've have a lot of issues here. Anxiety and depression and suicide are higher than ever before. Some people don't want to go to a therapist. These people are going to show up. They're going to be in your room, and maybe collaborate with a therapist, or maybe just show them a couple of tools that can help them that's going to change their life forever. As a coach, I have been free to serve my clients on a deeper, more personal level than ever before, and they're getting better, faster results. And that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help heal people and to love them. And I love doing it in this venue. So just because it's a little scary, or just because you may think maybe this is outside of my wheelhouse, that's okay. First of all, I appreciate you feeling that way and wanting, to treat your clients ethically and integrally. And maybe you do have that special thing, because here's the deal. It's like, I would move jobs as a therapist, right? And I'm like, well, go see so-and-so. And these people come back to like, Missy, it's not you. We want to work with you. They don't care what I call myself. They just so the relationship is the most important thing. So whether you're a therapist, coach, healer, whatever you call yourself, doctor, shaman, whatever you call yourself, the relationship between the client and the provider is the number one factor, regardless of training, certifications, education. So if you connect with the client and that client feels safe and comfortable with you, maybe for the first time in their whole life, don't you think that you're the one that they would choose to help them? So I went off on my soapbox a little bit there, but just because people are scared to deal with trauma and therapists think, no, you have to be a trained therapist, blah, blah, blah. I think that's total bullshit. I have met people who deal with trauma who aren't therapists and who are doing a better job, if not just as good. So don't be afraid of it. And here's the deal, is by therapists saying that, we're actually preventing people from getting the help they need and want. They don't, these people maybe don't want to go to a therapist, or they feel comfortable with you, or maybe they don't even realize, right? They're like, I don't have trauma. You don't even have to say that. You don't have to be like, well, you're traumatized, lady. You don't even have to say that to your clients. You could just be like, hey, I've got this tool that I think would be really useful for you. It's going to help relax you and take some stress off your back. Would you like to learn it? And if they say yes, then they do. And then they might come back to you a day or two later and be like, oh my God, what was that voodoo you did? That was amazing. That really, really helped. And it's not, you're not doing anything unethical or illegal or anything like that. So we can get that imposter syndrome, we can soothe by understanding these things a little bit better. Great question. Any other questions? Yeah, meeting them where they're at is extremely important. Yes. And part of what I teach is called motivational interviewing. Therapists use it, coaches can use it, really understanding the stages of change. Because once you identify where that client is, because if you're trying to, so there's like pre-contemplation, like, there's no problem at all, to contemplation, maybe I have a problem, to action, I need to do something about my problem, to maintenance, I need to maintain, these new behaviors so I don't get this problem again. If you're working with someone who's in that if you're working with someone who is just now thinking they have a problem, but you're giving them tools as if they've been maintaining this problem, it's not going to work. You're not meeting them where they're at. So understanding, the stages of change is really important before you implement, you choose which tool you want to use. Good point. Yeah, but I know for me, I get really excited. You guys can probably tell. I love this stuff. I'm very passionate about it. So I'm like, let me tell you all the things right now. And honestly, that can be a little overwhelming for people because it's a lot of information and stuff, but it can be, we can always revisit it and come back to it and all of that. So any other questions or comments? Otherwise, I can move on and share a little bit more information if you guys are open to learning more. Okay. So, I definitely think that there are, some principles of a trauma-informed approach, which is number one, safety. So if that client doesn't feel safe, that area of their brain is like, something's attacking me, they're not going to be able to make good decisions. So we have to help provide a safe, I don't always like to say hold space or provide a safe space, but maybe it is a little bit. We get to show them how to provide a safe space for themselves so that they can then engage in what's next, because challenges are going to bring up trauma. And we all know if someone joins like your group coaching program or you're teaching them something new, that's a challenge. And especially us adults, like we are kind of stubborn. So that's why it's difficult for adults sometimes to change, because it's difficult. We can be stubborn and stuck in our ways a little bit. So showing our clients how to be safe, and then helping them to rewire their brains, can be really useful for whatever, your result is as a coach or healer. So safety is really important. That trust is really important as well. I talked about that relationship between you and your client. If you don't have trust and safety, you have nothing. So establishing trust and safety in the beginning is like essential. I mean, it's like 100%. Like sometimes even just doing that is going to create major changes for your client. Maybe they've never really trusted someone or felt safe. So trust and safety is really important, and transparency. You all have done a great job of that. Jenna, you shared about your own experiences. That can help calm a client down, because they know, hey, I'm not just like a crazy person over here. The coach I'm talking to, like, they understand me, they get it, like they've been there before. They know what it feels like to experience trauma and how it can be in your body. That can help. Allowing a little bit of that disclosure, that self-disclosure, can be helpful for your client. And we get to learn how to use that with discrepancy, because we don't want to make it all about us either, which, sometimes we can tend to do a little bit. And, having that peer support. So if you have a group coaching program, that can be really useful, that your client knows that they're in community. Yesterday in one of my group coaching programs, we were onboarding a new client, and, she met the other client and heard a little bit about what her experience was like, because she was scared. She was scared to be seen. She was scared to ask questions. She was scared to know, oh, you're so welcome. I'm so glad you guys are finding this helpful. She was scared to be seen. So it was really good for her to hear from the other clients what it was like. Collaboration can be really helpful. So like in my trauma informed certification program, my brother is going to be doing some, I'm going to be bringing in some guest speakers. My brother, like I think I mentioned, he's a gastroenterologist. He's like one of the best in the country. He has like 20 like publications or more. He's like works at Chapel Hill. He teaches other doctors. Like, he's really good at what he does. And he bumps up against trauma all the time, and suggests therapy for folks quite often. So he's going to actually come and do a guest speaker presentation about that. And I'm working on getting some other doctors and specialists as well to do some presentations about trauma. And also, you guys know, I mean, like I said, maybe collabing with a therapist, or if you have a client who's got some triggers coming up and you feel like it's a little bit outside of your wheelhouse, like that's okay. Like, ask someone else to come and be a guest speaker, or, gift your client a short session or something, especially if they're paying you like thousands of dollars. Like that just seems, just something kind and normal to do. And we give our clients empowerment, because recognizing that your client, recognizing that they did have their power taken away or their control taken away, especially in sexual trauma, can actually be helpful for them to regain their power, because they've probably been feeling like, what happens to a lot of people, especially with sexual trauma, is they feel so, scared. They feel like they have no power. There's a lot of shame and guilt there, and they blame themselves, and they continue to kind of think they're a bad person, which really sucks. I hate sexual trauma because of that. It's a lot of shame. So helping to empower our clients by showing them, and allowing them, seeing how they can accept and move forward with that and gain power, can be really helpful and useful. Helping them to own their voice again. And then also, another, and I can include this, I'll write it down, but another principle of, that trauma-informed approach is, again, understanding, what I like to call the pie theory, which is the person in their environment, right? Because we see our client, they might tell us about their children or their parents, but we don't know everything. So when a person comes in to see us, we have to take into consideration their culture, their background, their nationality, what their family dynamics were like, what they were like as a child, what they're like now. Like that person brings all of that with them into a container, and especially if you're in a group container, you've got all of that at the same time. So it can be a lot of dynamics to understand and to consider. So part of that trauma-informed approach as well is understanding and taking into consideration gender issues and cultural and historical factors as well. I'm going to pause for a moment. Any questions now? Any comments? No? Okay. All right. I would like to share a little bit now about the trauma-informed certification program that I will be offering starting probably next month or so. There are several key outcomes, like shifting from being, the best kept secret in your industry as really a leading coach. So you're really going to get raving reviews, excellent testimonials from your clients once you become trauma-informed and step into like your next level as leadership, while you guide your clients with skill and mastery. You get to release feeling afraid of harming your clients, re-traumatizing them as you shift into a powerful trauma-informed coach and guide, really mastering your craft and truly making a difference as you embody integrity. You don't have to feel insecure about working with trauma, and you become unapologetically, confident in that work as you take your clients through these deeply transformative healing journeys, really with unparalleled excellence. You can heal that fight or flight response so that your client gets to make better decisions and life choices for themselves by learning these powerful tools to navigate trauma that will leave you also feeling more confident and empowered and can take your healing work to the next level. And shift feeling anxious about triggers into knowing exactly how to navigate your own trauma responses by soothing your own nervous system and undergoing the most transformational healing of your life. You can also uplevel your existing offers to triple your prices, create a better impact, and make more money in your coaching business as well. So the Trauma-Informed Coaching Certification Program is a 6-module course with practicums as well. 6 modules, 6 months, and 3 practicums, and it's just $3,000. Any other questions or comments? We have about 15 minutes left. If no questions, I'd love to hear maybe 3 takeaways that you got from today.
Okay, so takeaways. One, thank you for doing this.
You're welcome.
Part of me, because I know I have my training, and when I hear your things echo the things that I already know and been trained in, I love that cross piece on it, because it does reinforce for me. It's like I am, these pieces that I'm doing, these are the steps, and they may have different names. It's like, oh, I can see how that is similar, and we're working in the same manner. And I love when we get that information. I also love your viewpoints on a few things. Your perspective on the same thing has given me some up levels as far as my understanding of how things are working, especially where we are. Where's the piece that I have here? The piece that really stuck out was the maturity level at the time of the trauma, the trauma, whenever it got big enough for the client, for the mind simply changing it to a trauma. That is so key in actually working with our clients, and our expectations for our clients and where we need to meet them. And especially if they are in a group program where, and if they are at a certain level, are they ready for that program? Is that the case? It's like, is that going to be the best fit for that client and for the other people in that program, so we all can get results? I thought that was really great. That gave me an up level on it, and I truly appreciate that. The parasympathetic and the sympathetic, thank you on that. I actually have some techniques for it too, and so finding out different ways which will work for that particular client is always always useful. I always want to bring more skills in, and the whole idea of safety. That's that's got to be paramount. And I like the frame you put on that.
Thank you. That's a good point about understanding the maturity level and understanding, like, when you're trauma informed and you have like a sales call with someone, is this person ready? Or what happens if they're really triggered and like mental health issues come up when you're in the middle of the program? Like, what do you do in a trauma informed way that's kind and caring and is going to be best for you and your client? Because at the end of the day, if it's about the clients, because you have a big heart and you care about your clients, when it's about your clients, you do what's best for the client. And that may be letting them go with kindness and compassion, because it's going to be better for you and your other clients too. And think about like okay, so imagine a coach who was like, no, you have to pay me the $7,000 or else I don't care if you're in a mental health crisis. Like, what? Probably not going to refer them. And I'm probably not going to go back and work with them again when I might have otherwise, right? If they treated me with kindness and understood trauma.
And got me to the resources that I needed. And that's on, that would be on me when I'm looking at somebody to join the program. It's like, am I actually getting them to the place where they're going to be their best? I think they really need one-on-one, or do I have them, or they want the group program? Is it going to be a good match? Yeah. Is it going to be a group program? Because that's, I don't have to put as much intensive work into them. However, if they're not going to get I'm not going to get the results. I think that's important for, us as practitioners and coaches and healers, that we have that. And I'm so grateful that you pointed that out, because it does, like I said, it gives me a different, like an up level on it as well. So that's going to be super helpful.
Great. Thank you. Jenna, did you have any other questions or comments, or would you mind sharing your takeaways? I have a dog, so if he starts barking, don't be too startled. I get a trauma response every time he barks, like, oh.
Mine's asleep right next to me, so it's all good. Yeah, thank you very much for this. This was very, very interesting, and definitely piques my my curiosity a lot more. So yeah, and the stuff that I talk about with intuitive eating, it definitely does trigger a lot of emotional responses, because people do have a very emotional relationship with food, and just their memory surrounding it, the language that their family and friends and society has used around them. And so and there are unfortunately a lot of people who are dealing with trauma with this, because I was even just I was asked to be a moderator for a group for intuitive eating, and unfortunately I don't know, it was more of it was run by people who were kind of more in the lay position rather than in a professional position. And so they definitely didn't really know how to deal with the traumas that people had, and they really wanted to force their voice onto those people and say, this is how you're supposed to speak in this group, and you're not supposed to like say anything outside of that, and if you say anything outside of that, then we're going to be a big bully to you. And it really kind of scares people away from what we're talking about here. And so bringing that trauma-informed piece is a really important part that I don't think a lot of people recognize. So, and you said something really interesting in the beginning. We're talking about the with children, with school. And I personally am having that issue with my own son right now. I homeschool him, and he's got certain areas of school that really give him a lot of trouble. they kind of pushed a lot of writing onto him, and he's a perfectionist like his mom. And so if he doesn't feel like if he's an expert at it the very first time he does it, then he just can't do it, and so it gives him a lot of trouble, and he ends up drawing out times that it takes him to get something accomplished. And so I'm struggling with that, and so I don't know really how to best support him. And honestly, as I juggle business and and doing all of the other things and homeschooling him at the same time, I don't always come at him from my best perspective. but it is very interesting that you would say that even a child who's having trouble with staying focused on their schoolwork, that it could be a place from trauma. So I'd really be interested to see how that plays into that, because I think he was kind of traumatized with how things were introduced to him with his schooling. So just the curriculum layout, and it kind of felt like the stuff that was expected of him was stuff that I was doing when I was a senior in high school, not when I was in fourth or fifth grade. So so anyway, so those are just some thoughts that had crossed my mind during the presentation.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for sharing that. Hi, AJ. Welcome. Glad to have you. Um, yeah, absolutely. It's been really interesting, the studies that they've done with children. And children's brains are so fascinating. And that's why they're able to learn so quickly, because they're born with so many neurons. And then as they grow, and the neuronal pathways that are most important for their development grow together, make new pathways, and then all these other ones just fall off. So they end up with a lot less. But those patterns of behavior are ingrained pretty deeply. It's kind of like if you walk to the store every single day, there's going to be a path in the grass, right? You're going to like eventually. So what we do is we start using other paths. And that path, since you're not using it as much, it starts to grow back in, right? Or starts to fill back in with grass. And then the other one gets stronger because you're using different ways. And that's something that children can do sometimes more easily than adults, but adults can do it too. So it's really neat. And certainly if you chose to do the coaching program, these tools would definitely help you and your son. So he can be a little bit more relaxed and learn and actually incorporate that information on a deeper level, so it's not as hard.
Thank you. Yeah. It sounds definitely very intriguing, for sure.
Yeah. Well, if you want to have like a one-on-one conversation about it, we definitely can. Just, shoot me a DM and, we could set up a call and talk about it more if you'd like.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, of course. And that goes for anybody who's listening to the replay as well. I'm definitely open for another conversation. Any other questions or comments? I was going to say, you said that, you're in another group and you guys are out there and you see coaches who could really benefit, from being trauma informed, and probably some other, clients or other colleagues out there. I would love to speak to them and offer them, the same opportunity to learn more about trauma, and, become more skilled if that's a choice that they would like to have. So if you could spread the word, that you were here in this training today, I'm all about that reciprocal energy, giving back, and referring out, when needed. So yeah, if you wouldn't mind maybe sharing this group, or, talk a little bit about this training today and how it helped you, or how it changed your perspective, or how, you're going to be incorporating new ideas or theories, into what you do, or how it even empowered you and reinforced like the voice and the knowledge and the experience that you already have. I would greatly appreciate that. Well, I really enjoyed getting to know you today, Jenna. I'm really glad that you were here and we got to chat. Jill, it was excellent seeing you again. thank you so much for being here and for participating. It really means so much to me, and I'm sure it'll mean a lot to your clients as well as you move forward with some new ideas. If any other questions, or if you notice something that's changed in your work with your clients going forward, with how you even see things in the world now that you're a little bit more trauma informed, I'd love to hear from you, and I'd love to know what that's like. So please feel free to shoot me a message and update me. All right, so we just got a couple more minutes if anybody else would like to share anything or ask a quick question. If not, I'll go ahead and hop off. I think this has been great. I really appreciate it. Would you all be interested in more events like this? Yes, yes. Okay, great. I'll keep that in mind, and I'll let you know if and when, if and when. But it's good to know that there's interest for sure. All right, well, I hope you all have a beautiful, blessed day, and I hope to see you again soon. Thank you again. Bye-bye.